So today I'm going to do a recap on the marketing strategies. So the basic marketing strategies are the 4 strategies which are called the generic strategies of market penetration, product development, market development, and diversification. The idea here is that you're either selling a new or existing product into a new or an existing market. The one strategy that is sort of throwing people away is diversification, because diversification is much more than a new product and much more than a new market. If you're selling a new product into a new market, it's essentially 2 strategies. Diversification is more than the combination of these 2. The diversification is selling a product that is significantly different. It's a totally different industry, different look, a different target. It's significantly different. Like someone's producing cars and now they're going to produce peanut butter or something like that. It's very, very, very different. That's the way that you have to look at it. So if you're making a new product, it's called simply product development. If you're selling it to a new target, means the product stays the same, but it's a new group of customers. It's called market development. And if you're not doing anything as a new product, as a new market, it's called market penetration. Example of market penetration would be to lower the price. If you lower the price, you usually sell more of the same product. Increase your distribution. That's also increase the number of products that you usually sell. But also, if you were to advertise more and use more social media, eventually you will be selling the same thing to more people because you would get more visibility. Other strategies, there's another one called the basic competitive strategies. And so this one is a question of market share, essentially, trying to gain some shares, but at the same time, focus on the target that you're selling and the product that you're selling. So if you're trying to sell the lowest price as possible, this is called overall cost leadership. So you're not focused on the brand, you're not focused on a specific group of customers, you're not specifically focusing on any features, you're just trying to have the product that is the most affordable. Then, if you're trying to focus on a specific group of customers, it is called focus. You will see on the next slide pretty soon, you will see another strategy which is the same. It's called niche strategy. A niche strategy is you're selling a specific product to a specific group of customers. So you can see that you cannot be covering too many customers. And in order to have your market share, you need to focus on a specific need with a specific design or something like that. Then you are being focused on a specific target, a narrow target. That's why it's also called sometimes niche. Differentiation is this time the focus is less on the consumer, but more on the product, trying to have a product that is so different that it appeals to a different group of people. So the second effect that it will appeal to people, but the first effect is that the product is really meant to be different. And then the middle of the road is a product that is normally should appeal to everyone. For the most part, people should not be like a huge fan of this product because it's sort of a vanilla ice cream flavor, if you want. It's not nobody's really favorite flavor. It's people's acceptable flavors and universally acceptable. Then there's 3 strategies that have to do with the being focused on the value that you provide. So there's the operational excellence when you're actually selling a product, which a brand which is very known for working very well and being easy accessible. So you could think about fast food restaurants, for some banks, or maybe you could think about some credit cards that would be very known for operational excellence. In the way you do it, people like it. So maybe you could think about festivals. You could be a festival that is known. Maybe you don't have the best singer, but the singers is the second best. But what you have as the best is the organization of the event. The event goes very well. The location is always a great location. Everything is smooth. There's enough space. It's easy to find where you're supposed to sit. It's easy to find where where is your lodging and where you can rest. The place is clean. So that's operational festival of a music festival. Customer intimacy is the idea that you're going to have the best relationship with your customers. So I have examples here like IKEA and Volkswagen because they have a club and then they really take care of their club. But there's a lot of organizations like this who have different relationship with different customers based on how much do they buy. And maybe then they have discounts because they belong to a specific group, or maybe they hear about products before everyone else, or maybe there's some products that are not going to be sold to everyone else and will be sold just to the member of the clubs. So for a singer would be some similar things. Is you have your fan base, the people that you are closer, the relationship that you build with your fan, the type of possibility that you give the fan to go to a certain area, to see your concert, to meet with you, the meet and greets of the concerts, appearances and all that. So customer intimacy is very important in order to provide more value. Product leadership is when, and that's a tough one to have, is when you want your product to be sort of the category all the time. So, you know, the iPhone, I suppose, is the winner for this, or you could think about Spotify or iTunes when it comes to the music industry, is they very much lead when it comes to downloads, and people, when they think about downloading, it's almost like if you say I'm Spotifying, people know that what you're talking about, because the name of the company became the name of the products, like a Kleenex or like a Frigidaire. People associate these. Then the competitive strategies are the ones that really focus very much on the most sold product and the market share. So the idea is the market leader is the company that tries to survive having the most product being sold. And that's an important situation. And obviously, I would say the situation with COVID has sort of propelled the world, or even you could say easily the United States, into this market leadership. A lot of small brands have disappeared because of COVID, because everyone went to Amazon to do their shopping, and most of what you find in Amazon succeed. They get the biggest market share, the biggest brand. And so COVID was not a great thing when it comes to helping small brands. That's mostly help big brands. So these big brands were happy because their market leadership strategy has been multiplied and more prolific. Market challenger is when you really focus on trying to be the second best brand, and in order to get the market share as closer to the number one and stay as close. The market follower is when you actually don't want to challenge the market leader, and you don't want to challenge the market challenger, but you essentially trying to learn, maybe with a step behind, what are the leader and challenger trying to do in order to get better. And then the market nicher is a brand that will really focus on a specific group. And I mentioned before, that would be the same as the focus. So here, I would say this is so similar to what you would find in the music industry, where you would say, where can the artist go? Well, the artist could play for a major label, and the advantage is that artist is going to have the opportunity to get big market share. Maybe he's going to be in a label competing with other artists, or maybe artists from other labels. In that situation, they will be a market challenger. Then you would have the market follower, which would be an artist who does not really have a very unique style and a lot of originality and doesn't stand out, and definitely does not lead. The music genre is not the most innovative, is not the one that creates the new movements, is the one that follows the movements. And people like it, and it's very acceptable by most people. And then the market nicher, that would be when you try to maybe combine some gender together, having a multiple gender, and that sort of a market nicher is sort of what I've heard a lot from the different groups when they talk about Andrew James. You know, should Andrew James do more of this and this and that and combine, and therefore become a market nicher and use that strategy in order to grow, versus being specifically trying to challenge, you know, or to be a follower. Because right now, most students, I think, have been voicing the fact that he's very much of a market follower. He's sort of looking like this, and like looking like a lot of artists, not having his own voice. And the option of becoming a market challenger may not be the best one. Maybe the option is to really focus on a small group. And the market nicher is the one that makes the most sense oftentimes, because you want to be as differentiated as possible. And you want this differentiation to help with being competitive. And so that's what most of the time you will try to do, is be a market nicher in order to take advantage of the limited resources that you have, because the less resources you have, the more you should use the little you have to focus on a specific group. And that's why, like this, based on what I know now, the market nicher as a strategy is the one that makes more sense. Now, when you're looking at competitors, the name of working and analyzing and researching your competitors is called benchmarking. So benchmarking is analyzing your competitors. The first thing you analyze, the most common one, if I had 5 seconds to talk about this, is you would analyze your competitors' strengths and weaknesses. So that's the 101. But you should analyze more than their strengths and weaknesses. You should also analyze their strategies. Try to guess, estimate their strategies. Try to guess, estimate their objectives. Try to estimate also who do they focus on, who are their targets. Try to define their positioning. So essentially as S, strengths, weaknesses, and STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And then look at their prices. So that's sort of the beginner benchmarking. That was actually my first project ever in 1991, I think, in marketing as a consultant, was benchmarking prices. So you go and look at your competitors' prices, and you look how much do they cost and how much discounts do they have, and then you see when they do discounts, because there may be time where they do discounts. So you want to try to do discounts. Sometimes they don't do it, depending on what type of position you have against your competitors or when they are doing discounts. Then you see where do they sell. So sometimes it takes physical work of going around and looking where actually those competitors sell. And then you also want to look at if they're creating new products every year. How many do they have in their product line, and see if they see which products are the best, rank their products, see how long, analyze why these products, or why is the company's strengths and weaknesses, and then you can do a strengths and weaknesses on specific product in their portfolio. Then you want to see how do they communicate. So what is their slogan? What is the most common message? Which method of communication they use the most in terms of if it's magazine, which magazine, if it's radio, which radio, if it's appearances, sponsoring, which event they sponsor. If it's social media, you want to kind of get a weight of which social media they use the most. And if they post, you want to see which day they post and which hour and all of these different things. So all of this is very important, and it creates a lot of tables for all the competitors and a lot of columns in order to interpret all of these findings and give some weight of all of these and evaluation. Then you want to see their relationship with the distribution channel. And you want to see if they have what's called trade leverage. So trade leverage is very important in the business. I mean, this is like if this was a body, I would say it's the blood that flows in our body. The trade leverage is the blood that flows into a business, into a brand, which is that how much bargaining power does this singer, this artist has in order to get what they want. So obviously, is their brand famous? Is their brand has a good reputation? Do the distributor want to work with them? Are they solicited many times to go and participate in events, in concerts, in news media appearances? The more the artist is being solicited, and the better it is, but also which location and who is soliciting them is also very important. So there's a quantitative issue and there's a qualitative issue. But the higher trade leverage, the more you will be able to get things for free, essentially, or goodwill from the trade. The trade only helps the brands that generates more to them, more attention or more sales or more profit. Some brands are really good because they generate a high dollar volume. Some brands is high traffic, and some brands is high profit. So for example, when it comes to my cognac is very good, not because of the volume, not because of the traffic, it's not the most famous brand, but it's very good from a profit perspective because it's a high-end limited edition. So the distributor actually likes to sell my cognac because they know that the people that look for something very good, they will be satisfied with mine and they will come back, and it's sort of a niche, very niche brand. And so that's the advantage, which is have a high trade leverage because of the profit that my business generate to them. But on the other hand, it's limited to the high-end store. So for example, in Los Angeles, there's 2,500 stores, and out of the 2,500 stores, I can only sell in 50 stores because there's only 50 stores that will attract the type of customers that would want to spend more money for something that is not known by everyone. A lot of people buy the #1 sold brand because they feel that this is better. And there's a lot of people that know better that volume doesn't speak for quality. So they're looking for a higher quality product, and therefore will look for more family-owned, handmade craft brand than they will look for mass volume sales production type of brand. But it's different thing. One is market share. Again, we are talking about strategy, the market share, high volume, low price, mass production, lower quality, but high reputation, high brand awareness and all this. And then some other people are more specific. So you can see this in the music industry where there are maybe some artists which are more commercial and some artists that are less commercial. And that's sort of the word that we use when you talk about commercials. Then the last thing I want to talk about when we're talking about benchmarking is also looking at competition analysis when it comes to overseas. Sometimes you can make a good analysis of what people are doing in order to compete by looking at brands, not just in America, not just in California, but seeing in other states, seeing in Canada, seeing in Mexico, seeing in Europe, seeing in Asia. What do they do? And sometimes what they do in this market is something that you could adopt in your own market. So then you come up with an innovation, which is an innovation for the market where you're selling the product, but it's not an innovation for the world because it's already existing somewhere else, but your target may not know about this. Sometimes they know about this because they saw it somewhere else and then they see it in their market and they say, oh, this is something that I heard. This is a style of music that I heard while I was in Japan, and this artist is bigger in Japan than it's here, and I'm glad that they're coming here now so we can enjoy. This slide may look complicated, but this slide is equal to this slide, which is equal to that slide. They are all the same slides. There's nothing new, but some have images and some have words. So if you want this one, I did it purposely because we know we all have different brains. Some people are left brain, some people are right brain. So this one is going to be essentially just words, but it talks about the fact that you have high level strategies and lower level strategies. So you have strategies at the P level for the product. So you have the strategy of defining the quality, the strategy that has to do with branding, the strategy which has to do with services, packaging, different packaging strategies. But these are not the high level strategies, but they're still strategies, they're not tactics. So if you want, there's corporate strategies, then there's sub strategies, the strategy at the product mix level. And then you have the tactics, which are the activities that you do on a daily basis. So it's 3 different levels. And so that's why when you have opportunities that go after the strategies and opportunities that go after the tactics, and you want to be able to differentiate those two. So this table here is really good because it gives you a summary of all a lot of the basic strategies, mostly looking at the 4 generic basic strategies, and then some strategies looking at independent strategies for the price, for the place, and for the promotion. So we haven't talked about price, place, and promotion sub-strategies yet, but you can have them on this table. This table should be in your PowerPoint, or they should be also in the tips, because I have a section in the file, and then if you click on file inside Canvas, inside there's a section called tips, and inside tips, I do extra summaries of specific slides in order to sort of compile things. This slide is, again, the same, but it's looking at it from with a drawing, where what I do is I use a pyramid in order to express what's at the top of the pyramid versus what's at the bottom of the pyramid. So if you want at the very, very top at the pyramid, you have the mission, the vision of the company. So these are the broad existence, reason of existence, the reasons why the business exists. And then under this, you have the corporate strategy. So again, I put the 4 basic corporate strategies. And then under this, you have what you may call the lower level strategies, the still strategies, or the sub strategies. So whatever is on this table here the sub-strategies down there are also on the slide next to the product quality, branding, and services. So they are the same. It's just one is words and the other one is there's also the pyramid and the fact that there is this. This is important to understand because when you are in management and when you are in a higher executive management, you may not remember all the details. You know, it's like if I tell you, oh, what is a direct versus indirect distribution strategy? Is that a sub strategy and all this? You know, you may not use this all day and easily forget about it. What I would like you to remember in 1 month, in 2 months, in 6 months, is that there is like a ranking in terms of strategies. There's the broad and the less broad. So the broad are called the corporate, and that's the one that we just reviewed here, you know, between this one, this one, this one, that one. These are the broad, they are the corporate strategies. It means that's a strategy that you take at the highest level of the pyramid. And then you have strategies which are taken at lower level, but they're still strategies within the P. So we're going to talk about pricing very soon, and you will see the sub-pricing, sub-strategy for pricing. These are not tactics, they are sub-strategies, they are lower level strategies. So being able to see the difference between something that is a bigger concept versus something that is a smaller concept is essentially talking about broad and narrow, which is strategies versus tactics. And in between, you have sub-strategies when it comes to the 4 Ps. So I made this summary slide because by now, I think you will make more sense of it. And the philosophy, I think, behind marketing that is very important. You will make more sense of it because the idea is that to succeed in business is you need to understand who's your customer. And this is defined by the concept of segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So when I ask a business, who is your customers, most of the time they don't know. Even less they know who's their segment, target, and positioning, but it's very important to be able to divide your customers. Then the next thing you want to understand is the concept of opportunities. The opportunity is what supports the development of your business. It's like the skeleton, it's like the backbone of your business. And then you have this concept of just noticeable difference, which is what is it that you're offering that is different? So if we report this to Andrew James and we sort of overlap this with Andrew James, the question is, who are the persona? Because that's what I sort of would like you to use for this project is who are the persona that define Andrew James customers? So in order to develop those personas, you're going to do the research on the STP. And then what would be the opportunity that Andrew James will go after? So obviously you want to talk about the strategic opportunity. And then what should Andrew James do in order to be noticeably different? In that situation, I think the strategy is most likely to become the market niche that I just talked about a few minutes ago. But in order to do all of this and to do it effectively, the column that supports all of that is the research. So you need to do research of the STP, of the opportunity, and the just noticeable difference in order to be able to come to the client and give them a solution to the problem that they're facing. So that's the overall philosophy, business understanding that I've been trying sort of to explain since we started in January. And so this is not a slide that I could have shown you back in January because it's almost like a new language for you. You're looking at this in January, I would have been telling you what I just told you right now. This would have all been Greek. Sorry, I'm insulting someone if you speak Greek, but if you don't speak Greek, that would have been Greek. So now suddenly you go, oh yeah, all of this thing makes sense. And more and more so, I'm glad I get it. And I'm working on this concept together in order to come up with a solution for Andrew James. So I just want to use a quick example because I think sometimes it's good. When you are a business, you need to create new products. So there's this company, which you don't know, I'm sure, Advanced Publication, who mission is to integrate and, it's to generate and monitor integrity in publication. So maybe you know about them because they have one product, which is quite famous. It's called Turnitin. And in fact, the name of their company is called Turnitin LLC. And inside Turnitin LLC, you have Turnitin, Grammarly, and Authenticate. But all of this is owned by the mother company, which is Advanced Publication. So you can think about this as an artist that becomes belongs to a label, and then they have multiple type of artists. And why do they have multiple type of artists? Because there's different genders, there's different targets. Here's the same thing. What is Turnitin? Who's the target? The Turnitin is actually a product used by professors in order to check the integrity of what students write. So to check the students are not plagiarizing. So they created Turnitin first. After this, they realized that they could create another product which is using the same database. You know, it's a little bit like if you're buying a shampoo, and on the shampoo it says he makes your hair smell, and it's called brand X, and then the same brand company makes brand Y, and they say that he makes your hair shiny. And it's exactly the same shampoo, and it does the same thing. But what you want to do is you identify that there are different targets, they want different benefits, and therefore you create different brands that focus on these different targets and put forward more so one of the feature in order to be recognized and get the attention and be bought by the specific target that care for that one feature that you can keep pushing forward. So here's the same. Grammarly is the same as Turnitin, but this database is actually used by professionals and bloggers and freelancers in order to make sure that they don't make mistakes when they write documents. Can it be used by students? Yes, it can be used by students, but originally for people that write. And then there's another one that I'm 100% sure you'd have never heard. It's called Authenticate, but what it is the same as Turnitin, or it's not the same as Grammarly, because Grammarly also helps you write documents. That's why it does the plagiarism, but it also helps you write the document. Authenticate, it's like the reverse Turnitin. Authenticate is actually a business-to-business product that is sold to research publication in order to find plagiarism, not from students, but from professors. So it's actually publication using it to find professors that are cheating when they actually submit a publication in a journal. But it's the same thing as Turnitin. It's the last product that they've created. And I find it very interesting because when I sent a publication, a research publication now to a journal to be published in that journal, what I do is before I send it to them, I actually make my paper go through Turnitin. So I'm using the student system just in case there's something that, sometimes I'm writing with co-authors. So most of the research I do is with one or two or three people. I don't know, never know where they got what they wrote, and I don't want to be plagiarized because of a co-authored paper. So I take it and I throw it in Turnitin in order to see if there is any plagiarism, because I know that the journal, the company, is going to put it into Authenticate, but I also know, since it's the same company, they use the exact same database, so that way I can get it done. The universities have not all figured this out yet, and they're only starting to do this. Authenticate has not been used for very long. It's been used mostly for the past 4 or 5 months. It's a new product, and we as professors don't have access yet to Authenticate. So it's only the publication that are using it against us, if you want. But Turnitin, every professor has access to Turnitin, and even the students have access to Turnitin. And so that's why it's funny that I'm using a product where I'm not the target, Turnitin, but because I know it's just a name brand difference, but it does the same thing, I'm able to use it. Why do I say this? Is because I want you to really see the importance and the connection that there is between understanding who's the customer and creating a brand that is better adapted to the customers. The more you do this, the closer you get to the customer satisfaction. But the more you do this, the more you develop more brands. So if you look at this company, Advanced Publication or Turnitin, how many products did they have 5 years ago? They had one. How many products they had 3 years ago? One. And then they added Grammarly and then Authenticate. I would not be surprised that there's more targets than this. And then they start creating new products in order to have new products for specific group of people. Maybe they will have another next product that will be for people that work as a journalist, media, a special media plagiarism, because we see it's the media, you could be reading the Washington Post and maybe there's things that are plagiarized in there, or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but who knows? So we could be I wouldn't be surprised if we were to take this and put them all through this plagiarism, we'll find this plagiarism. So there's probably another product that can be created for the news media, and other products maybe that could be created for the music industry. Maybe that's what they're going to do, create AI system where you make the song to be listened, and then they will tell you, oh, those words come from this song, and these beats come from this, and all of this are connected. And so that's the future where we're going, where we are constantly looking at targets, and the one that is closer and better associated with the target will get the target. So what are the 4 Ps? That was in quiz 1. The 4 Ps is the marketing mix, and they are all one thing. What's a product? Product is what you should be selling. So that's a generic term, but what do you sell? You sell a good, a service, organization, ideas, and location, and obviously people. And that's what you sell when you sell an artist, you sell a singer. What are the top product attributes that you're selling? We're selling the quality. So there's a less or more quality. We're selling the attributes. So we have like 2 features, 3 features, 15 features. You know, the how to use instruction is 1 page versus the how to use instruction is 100 page. So there's more features, more details. Should you have 100-page instructions for a product that the customers want something to be convenient and simple? No. So different features for different group of people. And then you have different product style and different design as well to please the people. The design is something that also it changes. It's not the same design all the time. With time, designs will be changing. And that's important because that's one way to create new products is by coming up with new designs. Packaging is, people don't buy product just because of packaging. There could be some example of product where the packaging is really the reason why they bought it. And in fact, you could put any product in it because of the packaging, they will like it. I'm thinking about like maybe Pringles chips or something. You know, you could put another brand of chips in there, they'll eat it the same way. It has nothing to do so much with the Pringles, but it has to do with the shape of the packaging and the shape of the Pringle in order to get people attention. So packaging is very important. And I have this example of this craft beer, which has been extremely successful. I mean, this is more than a success that I'm talking about. This brand is more of a revolution than a success. This brand has sort of created a chasm, a pivot in the beer industry where suddenly there was a concept called craft beer. And I couldn't say that it's the biggest craft beer, but it's really one that made a revolution. And I suspect that part of the revolution was also the revolution of its packaging. When it comes to design, before Ballast Point, there was no design like this. Most of the design were traditional. Most of the design were trying to look authentic and old and show legacy, heritage, and so forth. And then Ballast Point came with very unique flavors, and therefore they went for very unique labels. And then they took an ocean theme, and so that changed. It was a game changer for sure. But game changing with packaging, like I said, it's very important. And you can't just think about the product that you're selling, the goods that you're selling, but you also think about how you're selling it. Another thing that is very important is that to think that you're selling one brand may not be the best, as we just saw with Turnitin. Is sometimes you want to have multiple brands in order to speak to different type of customers. So the brand is very important because it gets people to like the product and recognize the product. It makes them make a decision faster. It's less risk because it's a brand versus something is not branded. It's suspicious. And then eventually people memorize things and it becomes this reputation and its identity that the product has. But brands are also important for the producers because it gives you the ability of having different inventories and different categories of products. Maybe you have different products in different markets, and that way you can separate, and maybe you can have create more market share in a market by having multiple brands in this market. Sometimes you have to have a license, exclusivity distribution contracts of one brand in a market, and therefore you can only sell that one brand. But if you create multiple brands, you could have multiple contracts in selling more products. So you still make the same product, but you put it under different brands. So that allows you to go around the contracts that you may have for distribution. So it's competitive to use a brand and it separates your brand from the rest. Another thing that it does, and this goes back to segmentation, targeting, and positioning, is when you have a brand, is you can make association. And if you can make association, therefore you are building brand positioning. This association is usually an attribute, a specific word that is associated with your brand. What is brand equity? Brand equity is essentially a branded good. versus a non-branded goods. So it's a difference between, water and Arrowhead water. Arrowhead water is water, and the bottled water is just water. But Arrowhead water has connections, has meanings because of the association it has with your brand. So that's the overall definition. Now, the specific definition is brand equity is also composed of factors. And the first factor is brand awareness, which means, do people know the brand? Are they aware of the brand? Have they heard this name? And or even better, if you give them a name, so you say rap, and people say Andrew James. That's the best type of brand awareness, which means that for a product category, there's one brand that comes to their mind faster than any other brand, and therefore that's the highest level of brand awareness. Not only they know the brand. It's like, Andrew James, do you know? I think I know. Wait a minute, is he an actor? No, maybe a singer. That's less than if you say, give me the name of a singer, and they say Andrew James. That's the highest level. So brand association are all the connotations, the meaning associated with the brand. Brand quality is the spectrum from low quality and high quality. And then brand loyalty is the fact that they have been buying and they're buying again. They're supporting the brand. Maybe they're telling others about the brand. And they like to try the new things from the brand, so they become fans. So this is very important because it builds what's called trade leverage. And so that's what I talked about before. One of the best things you can do is gain trade leverage. And one of the best things you can do to gain trade leverage is to create high brand equity, because the tip of the brand equity, the tip of the pyramid of brand equity is the most important, is brand loyalty. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, talking about brands, let's compare Toyota and Lexus, which are basically the same company.
Yes.
But Lexus is a luxury version of a Toyota, and yet they share a lot of the same parts, the same powertrain.
Yes.
Is that a marketing tactic to sort of sell the same car with some enhancements and give it a fancy name?
Oh, yes, it is. In fact, Lexus was not supposed to be the name. What happened is when they created the brand, when they were working on this Toyota, it was supposed to be Toyota Deluxe. And in fact, if you were to Google,
sounds terrible.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And if you Google that, you would see that, that was when in the 80s, you could buy a Toyota called Deluxe. But people thought it was maybe a little bit better, but it was never a luxury. So eventually Toyota said, we need to stop that, because this is more damaging than any good, because nobody buys it. So then they said, we need therefore to create a project that they will study how we should go about it. And therefore they created the luxury export US project car. And the luxury export US project, eventually people didn't see that, but they just saw the acronym and they just called it Lexus project, luxury export US project. And then someone, I was not there, that's only my guess, someone must have come one day and say, why do we keep calling it luxury export US or Lexus? Let's call the brand Lexus. And someone says, why not? And then they did a trademark search and then found it was available. And then they say, okay, let's try to sell the Lexus. When that happened, I was starting to do my research. They started before I did my research, but I was really still at the beginning of Lexus. That was the early 90s. And what I found very interesting is the Japanese could only sell Lexus in the United States of America. Then when someone would say, so what are you telling me? Couldn't sell it in Spain, couldn't sell it in Italy, couldn't sell it in Germany, couldn't sell it in Japan, couldn't sell it anywhere in Australia. No, people didn't want to buy it. And to me, that was very interesting, because it showed the difference between the perception of what's authentic luxury versus what's perceived luxury. Then this concept of authenticity is, what are the true elements of luxury that allows you to generate authenticity? And so that's what Toyota started to do, is they started changing the design. So like a good car company, what they did is they started copying their competitors, make it look big, make some straight lines, give it a name, do like Mercedes, call it ES 500, because when you look at the Japanese car before that, they were called Fair Lady, Star. And so that was a very Japanese way of calling cars. They love giving them names versus in America, it was always S350, M535. They were just named like this. And that's what the American wanted, big numbers with the letter in the front. So then the Japanese say, okay, we can't do this. If we want to sell luxury, we got to give it a big name too. So they gave them name. And in fact, if you go to the dealership right now, it's still the case. They give them big names like this. You know, in business, the more you try to reinvent the wheel, the more you waste time. So the Japanese very, very smart is they said, you know what, let's do just noticeable difference. Let's not go overboard. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what people want. Let's give them what they want. And that's why, you know, that's why I've been teaching, and that's my I'm annoying of often do I say that. And that's why I say with NG James, that's what you have to do. You've got to do this JND as well. What is the JND? He needs to look like a follower. Remember the strategy, you have the leader, you have gee, I have a blank. Let me go back to it. That was the other thing. So you have the leader, the challenger, the follower, and the nicher. So where do you want him? Well, he needs to do JND. JND, I believe, to be sort of a challenger, but not be a fully challenger because he cannot afford to be a challenger. Because you need too much resources to be a challenger. You know, challengers are like, I mean, it's like Lexus against Mercedes, Pepsi against Coca-Cola, Avis against Hertz. So you can't be a challenger unless you have the means to be a challenger. A challenger is not someone that says, you know what, I really like Drake. Hey, why don't we do like Drake? No, to go against Drake with the challenger, you already need to be established. You already need to be in another big label, and you need to have all the credentials to do that. So it's far from being that category yet, and therefore that's why I believe that you need to. He can't be a follower, because that's sort of where he is right now. So you need to define what are the JND for him to become a nicher, I think. And you know, that's what we're talking about. What are the JND in order to be a luxury Toyota? And if it means that we keep the same transmission because the transmission is great, let's do that, because that's not a JND. At least for the customer, that's not a JND. So what's a JND? Well, make sure the logo is everywhere. Make sure that we do a different dealership. Can the dealership be attached to the Toyota dealership? That's okay. They seem to take that. It doesn't seem to bother them so much. Make sure there's a wall. Make sure there's a fence. Make sure that you have more gold and silver. Make sure that you have a nicer carpet when you step inside. Make sure that the toilets have marbles. You know, so that's all this little J&D that you're going to have to do in order for, make sure it's more expensive, you know, right? So talking about this, what I find very interesting as a company right now is what Hyundai has been doing for the past 10 years. I mean, we're talking J&D. I think, you know, I'm a student when I look at Hyundai, what they're doing. I mean, mostly the last one, if you look at the last Hyundai, they even created a name. It's called Genesis. And not only that, is they didn't say, hey, let's copy the Mercedes. I mean, when I look at the Genesis, all I see is a Bentley. So I think that's gutsy to want to step up. But they're not even stepping up 1 step or 2 steps. They're stepping up 20 steps. But you know, I think that's the way I was brought up by my parents. Is they say, if you want to beat this guy, don't try to beat this guy. Try to be better than the next guy above this guy. And that's how maybe you will beat this guy. And that's what I think that's what Hyundai is doing with the Genesis. Because if you look at the Genesis 3 years ago, it looked like a bad Lexus, because I think they were trying to catch up with Lexus, and someone must have come in there and said, no, if we're trying to catch up with Lexus, we're never going to catch up. We're not even going to try to catch up with Mercedes. We're going to go straight to Bentley. And I mean, just for fun, you can just put Genesis right now and you will see those cars. It's just crazy. It's crazy to the point that I wouldn't be surprised that Bentley is going to come and say, throw a bunch of lawyers there, because it's like, come on, guys, you know, we're going to have to put Turnitin on this thing, and it's going to be not pretty to look at. If there was a Turnitin of this, it'd be like, ooh. But thank you for your question. So does that answer?
Yeah, thank you. And I learned something. I didn't know Lexus meant luxury export US. That's such a crazy way to create a car name.
Well, yeah, because that's really
backwards. It was reverse engineered.
reverse engineered. But also, I didn't finish because for the first 10 years, I remember there was some statistics that one day in a dealer sale like 15 years ago was in California was selling as much as the entire country in France or Germany in 1 year of Lexus. So it's just the JND was different when it came to that specific things. And what could have been the JND? Everyone can make a guess. Maybe the JND would have been just like, you cannot put the dealer next to each other. Make sure that they are miles away, not even in the same town. And that enough could have maybe multiplied by 100 the number of cars being sold compared to very little. And then the next JND could have been, you need to create a museum where you're going to say the Lexus Museum or whatever, and then you need to sponsor more opera, or I don't know what it was, but there was JND that they couldn't. You see, that's also what's interesting is because JND are not the same everywhere, and not every customer is the same, not every country is the same. So it's very difficult to do a luxury car made in Japan that would appeal 100% the same way everywhere. And obviously it didn't, because the numbers were really, the numbers were so bad that eventually Lexus almost gave up trying to sell to other countries beside the United States, because that's really where the car was made. And even the name is giving it away, you know? So brand equity is very important. The brand loyalty.
Professor, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
Just a follow up on Mike's car question. I want to go too far down the rabbit hole on cars, but I'd love to get your take on what's happened to the Volvo brand. It's kind of a tragic story.
Yeah.
But I'd love to get your intake on that, because I once was a huge Volvo aficionado.
Well, first, there's essentially three brands from Scandinavia, and Volvo is the leading brand. You have Volvo, Scania, Saab, and what happened is this brand were very independent, and they were doing a lot of things independent, and they were struggling because there was a lot of components they were not making. And so they were outsourcing the components, and then the emission, the crash test, their reputation, the amount of money that you needed required them to be merging. So then they started merging General Motors, they started merging with Volkswagen, they started merging with the French company called Renault, Peugeot, they started merging and having sub-components. So the more you have sub-components, the more your brand becomes a blah, like less. It's less special. And so therefore, so again, I know we speak in cars, and there's probably half of the class is saying, oh, what has to do with what we want to hear? But it's still the same. It has to do with strategy. Suddenly, you're thinking, are you a follower or are you a leader? So before, Volvo was a niche. But there was a niche that was very much leading into that niche. I mean, number one safety, number one reliability, and all this. And then they had to start competing against the Japanese. Then they had to compete against the Ford. Ford buys Mazda, Ford buys all these brands. So then they become big conglomerate, and they have to survive in front of all of this. And so it is very, very difficult. So then they lost their identity. The engine is half made there, the electronics is 100% made there, it's all assembled in Sweden and all this. We're part of a group and all of this. And then there's some crisis. And then it's time where there is a time where they need to go with someone bigger. So a lot of people, to go bigger, they went with the Asian companies, the Star Alliance, they have all kinds of strange name. I mean, so they went with, because there's a lot of brands of cars in Asia that we don't know because they don't sell them in America, but there's many, many brands that mostly sold in Asia or Africa now. And so they look for people that were investing in technology into the future. So they couldn't merge again with another European brand, and therefore they were taken by the Asians. And then when the Asians took them, Volvo in particular, they decided that it was time to make it even more luxurious. So if you look at the Volvo for the past 5 years, they became, I mean, if you see wealthy people that used to drive a Range Rover, 3 years ago, they were not driving a Range Rover, they were driving a Volvo. I don't know, they became huge and very luxurious with lots of services. In addition, when the Asian took over this, they asked for disassociation with all the club, because there's a lot of Volvo club in the world. So they asked to be disassociated. So before, Volvo was sponsoring all the clubs, because there's a lot of Volvo that are very collectible. And so all the clubs got no more support. So that was the first sign that was interesting, because all the club members saying, oh, we're not getting free gift and sponsoring of dinners and events and rent all of this by Volvo anymore, because the Chinese said no more association with all of these people. They are old. We want new young people to buy Volvo. It was supposed to be an old car. The equity was older people. They were to be conservative people that don't like new and innovation, blah, blah, blah. So the Chinese said no more of this. We're going super high luxury, like Mercedes and above. So they did all of this. And as they did that, they realized that it was not even it was pointless to do this. Let's go electric. So then they decided to go fully electric. And it was very abrupt. There was not like, we're going to do 50-50 or whatever. They went from all engine to no more engine and fully electric, which is the case right now. You can't buy a gas-powered Volvo anymore. So yeah, hopefully I gave you an answer. I could speak for another 3 hours on this, but hopefully I don't bore everybody, but I answer your question, Derek, at the same time of the strategy.
I realize it's a very long storied history about them, but I just want to hear your take. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. So yes, brands are very important, and brands are very delicate. That's all I want to talk about. It's, it's this delicate, and how you treat them, and how you treat the people, and how you treat the positioning. So now you remember we talked about segmentation, targeting, and positioning, and I told you positioning should come after you define with the customers. However, a lot of people do the opposite. They think about what do they want to tell the customers, and then they create the product, and then they say if the customers doesn't want that, too bad for them. So PST is what is most used, and a lot of artists use PST, and PST is wrong, and that's why you hit the wall, and that's a big problem. So then I said, my perception, so having done this for a long time and all this, is that it should be PSTP, which is that you have an idea of what the product should be, because that's you making it. But at the same time, you're very open to what the customer wants, and then you adjust it to the customers. And after you've done this, then you revise it by doing a repositioning. So it's positioning, segmentation, targeting, repositioning. And I think that's the ultimate way. And I'm hoping I'm convincing enough students so that they can see that this is the best way to go. But the literature doesn't talk about this. The literature talk about STP, 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 STP. The industry most of the time does PST, 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 PST. So there's already a clash between what's the reality and what's the theory. And so to me, the real thing that people need to do is the combination of the both. And I think also that's one thing that I enjoy being an instructor, but I enjoy also being a student, is when I had professors that were actually practicing, because they actually tell you what should be the way, because you're getting the theory, you see the practice, and I think the best way is to find your own voice and your own style within this and come up with your brand. So when you come up with a brand, you come up with a brand that has to do with the manufacturer, or you come up with a specific brand that has to do with the model. So you could be saying you could be selling Philips. Philips TV, Philips radio, Philips shaver, Philips air care product. So everything is under Philips. Or you could be saying the air care product has a specific brand, and it's only that brand, and you don't even know who's the manufacturer, because the consumer brand, the trademark, is the most important. So there's pros and cons in having one brand of the manufacturer for all the different categories of products, because that way you can spend on advertising on all of these different products, and at the same time it builds the brand equity of the brand overall. However, by having a brand that covers so many different categories, it's also possible that you have not as good on some categories and better in others, and therefore there's a halo effect, which means like some kind of downgrading effect from some product where you're not as good. So maybe you're much better at radio, that you are better at TV or computers, and therefore your brand of radio, which is really good, will be affected by the fact that your computers is not seen as good, and therefore it deteriorates a little bit your brand of radio. So that's an important factor. There's pros and cons on both. It depends on your resources. It depends on your targets and what they want and so forth. So I have some examples here with Philips that do so many things, versus I have example here of individual branding where you would have Nestle, for example, that would avoid to sell any products that says Nestle and would rather come up with specific name for different chocolates in order to have a different branding and meaning for each one of them. So the brand portfolio is this idea that you have different strategies. And flanker strategies is when you have as many brands as possible, in order to capture more market share. So if you have one brand, you get this much market share. If you have multiple brands, you get more market share because you have more brands. It's not just for having the possibility to go after several targets, but more capturing more attention. The cash cow is when you have a brand that is essentially it's just making money and you keep doing it. And then you have the low end versus the high end, where you have different brands in order to be seen by different customers. The next 5 brand strategies are line extension, which is to sell the same products with the same brands. So you have Danone yogurt, and then you're going to have different Danone yogurt with different flavors. Maybe one that will be diet, one that will be chocolate, but you keep calling it Danone yogurt chocolate, Danone yogurt strawberries, and you keep using the Danone yogurt for all the type of dairy yogurt products that you're making. Then you have the brand extension, where you would have a new product category, but yet you will be still using the brand. So it's like Barbie video games, Barbie dolls, Barbie clothing. And so what you would do is keep the brand, but for different categories of product that you'll be making. Then you will have the existing category with new brands. So you sell same product, but what you do is the only thing you change is the brand. And here again, it could be either for doing a flanker or for going after different targets in order to not make it complicated by changing the product. The recipe is very good, but for different groups of people. And then you have the new brands, where you would want to have a different brand because you're going after different markets. And every time you're creating different markets, you will try to have different brands. The last one is called co-branding, is when you will have several brands combined together in order to enhance and benefit from one another. So you're going to have Slim Fast with Godiva chocolate. So the idea is that people don't want Slim Fast because it's supposed to be diet. But if you are feeling that you're forced and you're motivated to diet, and you know that you're going to be eating Godiva flavors, then it's more motivating. And therefore, it's a good co-branding because it's a good combination that increases motivation. You losing weight and you eating something that's a great flavor. So now I'll go talk about new product development. And the idea here is that you have to develop a new product because it's one of the main strategies. The idea is businesses only grow because they have new products. So developing and growing is a necessity because that's the only way you succeed. I may have talked in the past about Sarah Blakely because I think she's amazing. She came up with underwear that eventually overnight turned to be $1 billion industry. So she came up with this underwear. She didn't know about sewing. She learned to sew. She didn't know about the industry. She did it herself. So she did everything by herself at the beginning and made a sales pitch to Neiman Marcus and sold thousands of these when she didn't have any money or anything. And she just made it happen because she was just bootstrapping totally this business. She became, very few months after this, the best entrepreneur woman in America. And so she came up developing new products and going after a market because the idea was to create a different silhouette for women by just wearing a specific underwear. But the other thing is that already existed. But the problem is the underwear that was used to create this result before was very unattractive. So she started making them much more attractive. she started thinking of different area of the body and different shape that people wanted. So this is essentially segmentation, targeting, and positioning is what area should we work on? What color should we work on? What size should we work on? What is the next shape and so forth? And obviously, because she was doing this for women, she started thinking about doing this for men. So for men, do they want to see do they have the same problem with where do they carry their weight? No, it's different area. So for the men, they focus on the stomach, and then she created some Spanx for men and so forth. The advantage of being the first one to sell is very important because you get to choose the target. You get to be the one that deals with the best distributors, and eventually you can get the most attention. However, you have to break the market, and oftentimes it's the one that's going to suffer from the time it's going to take and the fact that it doesn't go fast, not always fast. Now, so here's a bunch of opportunities, and I just took them like this because I want to show you. From 2020 to 2021, plus 21% of consumers are worrying about radiation, according to some source. During this period as well, 12% of consumers are worrying about the sun damage and some skin cancer. And during this same period, the opportunity is 36% of the consumer are worrying about microbes and viruses, according to this source. This was taken by this company called Lambs Puts Your Fear to Rest. So it's a company making clothes, and it's called Lambs Apparel. And what they use is a specific technology that blocks radiation and block viruses and do all of these different things for you to feel that you have an increased immunity. So to me, this was interesting. I'm not trying to sell or tell you that this is good and you should be buying it. I'm only saying that it's interesting that someone used opportunity of the flavor of the time. Maybe people are not so worried about immunity anymore. But 2 years ago, 1 year ago, doing something to help people immunity was an opportunity. Now thinking that this could be actually an opportunity for the fashion industry, I thought that was a stretch. However, someone did it, and it's this company. Then they talk about the benefits. Benefits for the immunity, benefits for better sleep, benefit for fertility boost, benefit for staying young and staying healthy longer, for having energy, recovery, improve the fact that you can remember things, feeling that your skin is healthier, and also it helps you digest. Who knows if these claims are true or not true? That's not the point. It's a big, far-fetched claim, I think. But anyway, that's what they're saying, using the opportunity of the fact that fearful of the sun, fearful of radiation, wanted to have better immunity. And even this could be used for many things besides selling vitamins. It can also be used to sell clothing. And that's amazing, I think. Different people adopt the product at different times. So this slide is particularly important, is actually extremely important for Andre James, on you working on for Andre James, because you have to create the momentum for the first 15%. The first 15% is broken down by the innovators, about 2.5%, and then the early majority, which is about 13%. So the idea behind this is that when you're launching a new product, when you have a young artist like this that's starting, you can't, I know there's some amazing, crazy success story that happens overnight, but most of the success stories don't happen overnight. And even for Andre James, if you make it work, I think it's going to have to be sometimes, hopefully not a decade, but most certainly within 2-3 years, it's going to take milestones in order to get there. But one of the first milestones is, in order to get the ball rolling, you're going to have to identify who are your innovators, the first group of people that are really going to like what you do. That's why I think it's important in this case to be a market nicher in order to appeal to these people. What is business? This business is about growing sales, selling more and more and more. The business should not be about getting very, very rich fast and then moving on. I mean, sometimes that's what you do, but I'm saying for the most part, it's to have some kind of accumulation, some kind of rotation, where you have one song that builds up, an album that builds up. Eventually, the album starts selling, but you need to have another album behind it. You need to have kind of stage of different songs, different albums in order to sustain your growth. And that's oftentimes what you find with artists is they don't totally realize this. This slide may be one of the most important slides to show artists is building up from one album to the other. And there's an effect of superposition and accumulation, and it just all adds up. This is called the product life cycle. And the product life cycle says that there's a birth of a product, and then an introduction of the product, and there's growth, maturity, and decline. All the product go through these stages. There is no rule of thumb on the shape that a product go through those stages. Some products have a very long market growth. Some products have a short market growth. Some products have a very short maturity, which means they don't plateau very long. Their plateau is very sharp. They go up very fast and then down very fast. So you don't know. Every product has a different life cycle, but every product goes through those 4 stages. And sometimes there's as I mentioned, a stage before the market introduction, which is called the birth. But you need to remember that and know that it's sales over time. Eventually, the product fades away. So what I find very interesting is those 3 slides. How does the consumer go? The consumer go like this because not everybody is the same. There's some people that care for the product to be the first, and some people that are much more skeptical and they hear about the product later. What's the main function of these changes? The main function of this is the interest in the product. Number 1, are you an expert, not an expert? Number 2 is, are you an innovator? Number 3, are you someone with a higher income? And number 4 is your level of education. The higher your level of education, the more you tend to be at the beginning. The higher income, the more you tend to be at the beginning. The more you care, the more you're at the beginning. The more you're someone that likes new things, the more you're at the beginning. So it's not just a function of income or just one of these. It's a combination of those 4. Where I want to go back again is this concept that if you are in the product life cycle, you're trying to have as many products as possible in many different groups. You don't want all your products to be in the maturity stage, because then you'll be a company that is very unbalanced. So a balanced company is a company that has enough product in the introduction stage and the growth stage in order to have enough product in the maturity. So if you have, just to give a ballpark, if you have 10 products in the introduction stage, of those 10, maybe 5 make it to the growth, and in the growth, maybe there's 3 that make it to the maturity. So that's why you need to have so many in introduction in order to have them keep going through all the cycles. The idea is that in each one of these cycles, you will have different strategies and different sets of activities for the different products. For the introduction, you'll focus more on getting people to know about the product. In the growth stage, you'll try to build some market share, versus in the maturity, you'll try to defend this market share. And at the end, in the decline stage, you will remove the product. There's many reasons why a product fails. Some reason is because maybe there's too many competitors and you didn't anticipate that. Maybe because there's some new threats from the government, some change of laws. Maybe because there were some costs in developing the products and launching the products that you didn't anticipate. Maybe because there is, it takes too long for you to launch a product, and when you launch it, it's not as relevant anymore. Maybe because the product went through all the stages of the product life cycle too quickly, so you're not able to harvest, because you do harvest money at the maturity stage, on the decline stage. Sometimes it's earlier, but the majority of the time it's then. So essentially you lose money in the introduction and you lose money in the growth. In the growth stage, you have a higher profit margin, which means that each product, maybe you make 30%, but you don't sell enough products to actually have a high profit. So therefore you have a small profit, higher profit margin, versus in the maturity, your profits will go down, margin will go down, which means that because you have too many competitors, people are less willing to spend as much money to buy this product. It's less of an innovation. But however, you will be selling more products, and at that time, you have a higher profit in terms of dollar volume, but maybe the markup is much smaller. So all of this have impacts on why your product were not able to succeed. The other thing I want to show just on the one slide is there's a lot of products that are sort of revived, and they have a very long longevity, either because they stay the same and they are not influenced by fashion, or maybe because they are being revived from slight design modification that give them an extra life. When you develop new products, you have 2 methods. So this is not so complicated slide. The idea is that when you develop a new product, either you have people with different function working at each one of the stages, or you have different stages based on the different functions. So the first function is the designer, the second function is the production person, the third function is the business people, the fourth function is the people that test, and the last step is you just launch the product. That's one method that is usually the more traditional, but it's not the most effective. The most effective, but it's also the most expensive, is to have people from each of the function in different stages. So which means you see that you are going to have 4 steps, and in each one of the steps, you put a representative of each one of the function. That way, these people can see all the visions in each one of the steps. So the first step is to think about the product, and then thinking about the product, you have one accountant, one designer, one production, one marketing business person, and that way they can have this overview of what the product should accomplish in terms of profit, margin, production, and marketing at each one of the stages, and therefore you're much more efficient in using the team-based method. But the team-based method works better when you have a big company, because obviously if you have 3 people, let's say, in each one of the groups, therefore you're going to have 12 people that are going to be involved in this, and there's not too many companies that can afford to have that many people in each one of the stages. Then what's important is the new product development goes through 8 stages, and you need to know the sequence of these 8 stages, from coming up with an idea, filtering the idea, testing the idea maybe virtually first, coming up with a strategy, thinking about how much money it's gonna cost you and how much money you're gonna make, then starting to develop the product, then testing this product and selling the product. Essentially 8 stages that allows you to develop a new product. This is why it's important for businesses to develop new products, and it's also why the new product development strategy is the most complicated, because it requires creating a new product, therefore understanding your customers. I just brought a few products and I wanted to show you this. All I wanted is tea. So all I wanted is tea is this person is realizing that there's more complication than they thought. This is not just tea, it's matcha green tea with oat milk and latte. It's reishi and maitake, and it talks about some kind of functional mushroom that's going to boost your immunity. It's non-dairy, non-GMO, non-fair trade, and women-owned. So you have to imagine the people that have actually created this product. They were not just selling tea. There's much more than tea that they are trying to sell. They are trying to sell a immunity mushroom, a health mushroom with all kinds of ingredients. The bottle design, the fact that it has all kinds of social validation and so forth. It is, when you develop a new product, then you're saying, are they trying to push too many buttons? Should they have more buttons? You could say maybe the person was the employee are all I don't know, disabled, or you can keep adding some characteristics to the product. Does it make the product better? Well, it depends. It depends of what the customer think. The marketer is the person that comes up with the idea. The customer is the one that buys the product. So in order to sell the product, you can't be just thinking about the idea to sell the product. You have to think about the idea that sells. So let's look at another example very quickly. Cage-free Alpha Dozen Simple Truth Organic. So in that situation, is you buying these eggs because it says Simple Truth. That's the brand, you trust the brand. But suddenly you say, you know what, but why did you buy these eggs? I buy these eggs because they're from chicken, they are cage-free. Then someone comes, another smart marketer, and he comes and he says, well, but it's grain-fed. So not only it's cage-free, but it's grain-fed. So you think, oh, those chicken, I visualize them. They're not in the cage, and there's an old lady with a beret, and she's giving them grain. So the egg needs to be better. Then another marketer person comes in and say, they are happy ants. They were brought up in fresh air. They received sunshine, and they had 108 square feet per hen, and they were put in the location that rotate pastures. They were tended by hand by small farms, which were family owned, and they did freedom walk all year round. I mean, to me, maybe because I'm a geek of marketing, when I see this, the last egg present packaging, I just want to laugh. Because I know this is Bernice. Remember last week, Bernice? This is pure Bernice. It's tell them what they want to hear. What is also beautiful about this is there's not a government that's going to step in and tell you that you're right or wrong. I mean, the government is not going to go and ask you, let me see how you feed those chicken. Let me see if you feed them by hand. Let me see how small is your farm. Small family farms. How small it is. There's no regulation for it. Yeah. Oh, there's no regulation for it? Perfect. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, because nobody's going to tell me that I'm small or I'm big. Do people want to hear me say small farms? Yeah. You sell more eggs if you say small farms. Say small farms. Can I say small family farms? People like family eggs? Yeah, they like it better. Sell small family farms. So marketing is about give people what they want. Right? So I'm not saying abuse people and take advantage of them. I don't want to be taken for a dirty marketing person, but I'm just saying marketing is understand the game. It's a game. The game to understand the customer, the game to say to the customer what the customer wants to hear, and therefore it's constantly adjusting the product in order to make the product better matching the market. Yes, Alex.
So I'm just curious. So you're saying this is pure marketing, and that the difference between maybe a carton that used to be, I don't know, 3 something, and this is being $5.99, maybe there's no quality difference. It's just pure marketing. I'm just curious.
Well, it depends what you mean by pure marketing.
I don't mean it's a marketing scheme instead of maybe a quality aspect to it.
Well, what I know is that if the difference of price is 5 times, it's not 5 times better quality. I doubt. If it's 5 times more expensive, is it better quality? I think so, because again, as a marketer, I think the customers are not that stupid, and they would see if the price is 5 times the quality, but it's not five times the price, but not 5 times the quality. They would see it. So you don't want to do that, because you don't want to be taking advantage of the customers, because that's not long term. It is possible that the price be 5 times and that the quality be 2 times, because that's still more margin. What you don't want to do in business is to be 2 times better, 2 times more expensive, 3 times better, 3 times more expensive. What you want to be is you want to be more time more expensive than it is, but you want the perception to go with the number of times that the price is. So you want your price to match with the perception, but the price doesn't have to match with the quality. In fact, it is very common that when you ask people to rate quality, they get it wrong. So Alex, I'm going to give you another example after 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
You take vanilla beans from Madagascar. Now you take a rotten piece of whatever that smells like vanilla. Okay. Then you give these to 5,000 people. And that's not me. You can find it on Google. Out of the 5,000 people, you're going to have 90% that are going to tell you that the good vanilla is the rotten vanilla. Difference of price is 10 times, 20 times. So now you're going to tell me, let's do business, and we're going to sell flavored ice cream. Should we use the one that's 10, 20 times more expensive, or the cheaper one that they 90% prefer? So you're obviously going to go, it's possible you go with the cheaper one. Now I tell you, okay, now let's do the same exercise. And I'm going to give this to 5,000 people. And now it's the reverse. 90% say it's the vanilla, and 10% say that is good. It's the crappy thing. Why I get 90% one time and I get 10% the other? Why do you think?
I don't know.
It depends who you ask. If I take 5,000 chefs who works in top restaurants, and I give them the good vanilla and the bad vanilla, 5,000 chefs, you have 90% that's going to say the good vanilla is the good vanilla. But if I give it to random people that eat every day at McDonald's, they're going to say the bad vanilla is the good vanilla. So then you go, so there's no right or wrong. It depends who you sell it to.
Mm.
And therefore, if you sell it to a chef, that's not a presentation for a chef. The chef doesn't care if it says small farms, happy hands, sunshine, fresh air. He's going to say, this is BS. I know it. I'm a chef. But if you sell it to an average consumer, that's where they're going to go, straight for this box.
Yeah, they've gotten me in the past. I love to cook, and that's why I'm kind of interested by this. That's why.
Yeah, and that's why I hope maybe I upset a few people because they think I'm really dirty. I've got to be so dirty for having this mindset. But that's exactly what it is.
No, it makes sense.
Makes sense. So then it depends who you sell it to.
Yeah, I saw a video during New Year's Eve, and it was about champagne, and the majority of people picked the cheaper champagne versus the Dom Perignon, but someone from France in that region, from Dom Perignon or wherever it's from, they picked Dom Perignon because they knew the quality and everything. Oh, it makes sense. Okay.
It makes sense.
Thank you,
It's exactly what it is. Yeah. So that's why when you're in marketing, there's not one way to do it. It's who you're doing it for.